We're on item D, receive a report and provide direction regarding the City Council meeting agenda format.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Council. At the last City Council meeting on June 9th, the City Council requested the opportunity to consider the language on the agenda, in other words, the agenda format, in order to address specifically the issue of who might request that an item be pulled for discussion from the consent calendar. As the City Council, and I believe the public are well familiar, our public agency, like many, if not most others, includes as a feature of its regular meeting agenda a section of the agenda called the consent calendar, which is taken in one motion by one vote of the City Council. Items on that list are not otherwise discussed unless they are pulled from the agenda or rather pulled from the consent calendar for specific separate discussion. The City Council, I believe, is also aware that the opportunity for public to comment and to participate in the discussion and the business meeting of the City Council is governed by the Ralph M. Brown Act in California. That is California's open meeting law. And while the Brown Act requires that members of the public have an opportunity to comment on any item on the agenda, including any item on the consent calendar, before a vote is taken on that item, the Brown Act does allow public agencies a broad level of discretion in how to organize, format, and manage their agendas and their meetings. The Brown Act, for example, does not even mention a consent calendar, and it does not specify any specific procedures for public comment on consent calendar items. Again, so long as the public is allowed to comment on consent calendar items, just like any other item on your agenda, before the vote is taken, the requirements of the Brown Act are satisfied. San Bruno's agenda, like most others used by public agencies, provides an explanation on the agenda itself about procedures pertaining to public comment and procedures pertaining to the consent calendar. In order to provide you with some information to inform your discussion about how you would like this issue addressed on the City Council agenda, staff looked at the agenda formats in all other 19 cities within San Mateo County and found that there's a real, there are basically three different ways that people do it, but there are, everybody has a consent calendar, everybody provides an opportunity for public comment, and there's no single way in order to address the specific issue of whether and how an item may be pulled for a specific separate conversation by the City Council. In specific, in 7 cities of the 20 in San Mateo County, their agenda identifies that an item may be removed from the consent calendar at the request of a City Council member, a member of the public, or a member of staff. In 9 cities, the procedure for handling removal of items from the consent calendar is not specified. However, or rather the procedure for addressing the vote on that item is specified on the agenda, but the who can request removal is not otherwise specified. And in 4 cities, currently including San Bruno, the agenda specifies that an item may be removed for separate discussion by the City Council and or a member of staff. In 2 of those cities, only by a member of the City Council. So again, that's only to illustrate that you have broad discretion, and there are lots of different ways to do it. And the City Council is, this is your business meeting. You have the right and the responsibility to manage your business via the format of the agenda and by your management of the meeting itself in order to provide the entitlement under the Brown Act for the public to participate, but otherwise for your conduct of an efficient business meeting in the public's interest. So with that, I'd be happy to take any further questions, and staff stands ready to make any changes to the agenda format based on your specific interests.
Mr. Rico, you had a comment?
Yes, a couple of questions. I've used the procedure a couple times to request an item to be pulled in the past, which I appreciate. I wonder, did that cause a problem, or why would not the citizen be able to do it? Citizens may not feel comfortable with approaching the council or the mayor and say, I want to talk about this, so we're restricting the citizen's ability to potentially get the information. I don't see that allowing the citizen the right to request an item to be pulled is detrimental to openness of the meeting. So I would hope that gets put back in.
All right, thank you. Well, just for the record, no, you weren't the instigator of this whole situation. But I actually approached the city manager, approached the city clerk to change this because I just want to, in some ways, streamline the process. There's nothing in the consent calendar items that would prevent you from coming up and saying, could you please discuss item C, item D, item E, whatever it happens to be. I just want to streamline it in some way to say, instead of pulling it and reading the item and having a separate vote on 4 or 5 different items, and it could happen that way, we had the opportunity as a council to discuss whatever we want to discuss. If we had something really important that you or another member of the public had addressed the council members, say, before, and asked them to pull it, or you came up and said, could you please discuss item C, I don't quite understand it, then we have the opportunity to vote on the whole consent calendar at one time. So that was it, just a matter of trying to streamline anything. It wasn't a target at any particular individual or any particular item or occurrence. So I'll just share that with you. So, Rico?
Thank you, and I appreciate you updating us. When I brought this up last time, I had kind of asked as to why, and thank you to the mayor. I think that now has been answered, and when. And if it's correct, it looks like February 24th it was there, and it was removed on March 10th. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what I went back and looked at early this morning to try to see, to answer my question. The city manager, I appreciate the background and that information. I know you just stated that it's the right and the responsibility of the council. And I know in the past, and when city clerk had gotten on too, we looked at formats, whether to move public comment up or in the structure of it and have it flow a little better. So I'd always believed and expected that it would come up to the council as a whole for modifications to the schedule, which I'm being told is our right and responsibility. And if I'm responsible, then I would like going forward changes be made at the council level, brought by the city clerk, who is responsible in my mind for, as the impartial person, for the agenda. If I'm incorrect in that, then Carol can correct me. But I think that I'd like to see citizen put back in, and I know tonight we didn't have anybody that asked. And I think if we went back in history and saw how many times it's asked, I don't think it's that many. I do respect your opinion for trying to streamline the meeting, but again, I think this is a decision for the council of the whole.
Anyone else? Irene?
Actually, I appreciate your explanation, and I think it does streamline it in, and maybe people feel better and easier if they could get up before the consent calendar was voted on and said, before you vote on it, can we discuss whatever item it is, instead of, move this and move that. So maybe that part isn't clear and needs to be clear. And then we can, I would suggest we take all of them out. Isn't there some cities that don't say anything about who can do it or not? I think that was in here.
That's correct.
So, don't say anything.
Anybody else? Ken?
We're all jaded here because we read this thing for years and years, and we take it all for granted. I mean, there could be someone that comes in and wants and caught wind of something, and it's very important to them, but it's pretty routine for us, and it gets placed on the consent calendar, and they're reading the fine print, and it says council member or staff, and it's the first time they're here, and they just don't know what to do, and they're besides themselves. So just I'd like it back in, just to let everyone know that, yes, you can do this. You can question it. It's open to anyone to question. If anything, a lot of this stuff probably needs to be clearer for the public, for the lay person who is not really familiar with public meetings, to be able to participate. So,
And I just like to add to that, and maybe it's a stretch for me, but the information on the consent calendar is readily available. It's available at the city manager's office, city clerk's office. It's out there, as is all of this whole agenda and all the explanation. So it's there, and I really don't think the council meeting, especially the consent agenda, should be the forum to actually go through this whole thing when all of the information is available and we have the bullet points here. I mean, if people are that interested, and tonight you had a group about with an issue that wasn't even on the consent agenda or the agenda itself here, that's fine. They got a chance to speak. And there's nothing to preclude somebody under consent calendar from coming up and saying, well, I don't quite understand this. Could you get into it a little deeper? Or I'd like a better explanation. What I was trying to do is to preclude somebody from getting up here, and there could be very well people before have done it a long time ago, to say, I want to pull item A, B, C, D, and E, and I want you to vote on those all separately. And so that's what I'm trying to avoid. It could be cumbersome. I'm just trying to streamline the process. So there's nothing to suggest at all, and I'm not even making the suggestion that we're going to preclude anybody from addressing this council, either under consent or under public comment. So,
Through the chair,
Yes.
may I suggest something? It says here, on the, all items are considered routine or implemented on earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested prior to the vote, period. And it doesn't say who can request it, doesn't request it. So the implication is anyone can request it before there's a vote. And then if somebody wants to get up and ask about anything, we can discuss it, and then we can vote on all of them.
Rico?
I was just going to say, so you could just throw citizen back in there, and that covers everybody.
No, the point isn't taking it, the point is that you discuss it before there's a vote on anything. Right now, we have to say, I'm going to pull item this, then you vote on the other items, then you have to vote on each item separately. This way, if you put it in unless requested prior to the vote, the person comes in and says, well, I want to discuss B, then you discuss B, and then after the discussion, you vote on all of it. That's the distinction, I think, is that maybe it wasn't clear before. That's all. That's it. Some of us who've been here for a while remember when we would be here till 2 a.m.
Well, it goes back before my time.
Yes.
But,
But we would be here.
I still watch the meetings.
till
They
2
were the
in the
best meetings
morning,
around.
and that business wouldn't get done because of all this stuff going on. So anyway, that's just my suggestion. I don't know if the city attorney wants to pop up and say anything. He doesn't look like he does, but I throw the ball to him.
And you're welcome to speak, Mark.
I usually don't speak unless spoken to, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. No, only to say that I think you do have broad discretion to decide how you want to run your own meetings, and I think that most of, if not all of the suggestions in front of you allow the council to retain the control over how the meeting is operated, and that's uniquely within your discretion, and you've seen that other cities have exercised that in different ways. And Councilmember O'Connell's suggestion would be one reasonable and appropriate way to do that.
And I'll go along with that. That's a good suggestion. Anyone else? Michael?
Well, I'm always in favor of streamlining things, and so I definitely agree that probably the most efficient way to approach this is to open give an opportunity for anyone to discuss the items rather than pulling items, voting on the remainder, and then readdressing an item. So I like the idea of keeping it at one vote, but allowing some period up front where discussion could happen. And I also agree with you guys that the language shouldn't seem prohibitive. So if we, I think Irene's idea was probably best, where we just don't limit it to anything, just put it out there that we'll be discussing it prior to a vote, and then we just have one vote.
Okay.
I think again, what this does is make it more inclusive, and it makes it open to all. And my personal belief, and I'm only one voice, is by taking citizen out, it gives the wrong impression, and I would have never supported that. And so I also would like to see going forward that changes to the agenda come to the council, who have the right and the responsibility. And if that's our responsibility, then I want it to come up to the whole.
Okay. It's coming to the whole right now, so are you in favor of that? Are you in favor of Irene's suggestion?
She's now made it inclusive. Just now, when we have a side note, like when Michael and I had to be recused from a vote, obviously then that'll be discussed at the time. And so you're saying from any one of us, if we had an item, as we did on the planning commission, we pulled that. So then we would have the discussion prior to even going to consent. And then if we needed to, like, let's say the majority of us said, let's put it off. So then we would just pull it out? Or are you saying we just vote on A through E, yay, and no on F? Is that how we're saying it?
I'm saying that if you word it the way I suggested, nobody can, you don't have to pull, anybody, staff, department, council, citizens don't have to pull an item to discuss it. They can stand up before the vote. Oh, I'm sorry. They can stand up before the vote.
I get that part. So
Okay.
I'm saying in the case
So
of
if you have
tonight,
to recuse yourself, you always say that before we
I understand
vote.
that. My example is on the consent calendar, we pulled F. Let's say the majority of us didn't want F to go forward.
Okay.
So then I guess the motion would be to approve consent A through E with a no to F. So I
Well,
think we'll
you-
leave
you
that to
can-
the city attorney to come up with how that's going to work. How's that?
Well, you can just, you can do it the other way. You can say, I want to pull F and vote on it. I want to
We're doing
vote
the
on
same
F
thing.
separately, just like we did with the,
Okay, so we're still saying do it that way. All right, that's what made it clear.
okay.
Beautiful.
So it sounds like there's 4, Ken? Is there 5? Okay. I think you have direction for 4 out of 5.
good with citizen too, but I just wanted to include.
3? 3 out of 5.
As long as everybody's included.
May I just be clear about the direction? Then that is that pursuant to Councilmember O'Connell's suggestion, the language would read something to the effect that the consent calendar consists of items that are routine or in action of previous action of the city council, will be taken with one motion unless,
No, there will be no separate discussion.
no, I'm sorry, there'll be
Oh,
no separate discussion unless requested, something like that, unless requested, period,
Right,
prior to the vote. Thank you.
prior to the vote.
Right.
Okay?
And Carol, if the minutes could show that the intent of the council was to be as inclusive as possible, that way if in future years somebody wants to come back and contest it, they can look at the minutes and know what we intended. Thank you.
Okay.